welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Webster Tarpley here in Washington, D.C. So, Bakiev was kicked out a couple of months ago. He fled to South Kyrgyzia. He's since fled on to Belarus, where he's living in exile. His supporters are in the south of Kyrgyzia. Now, South Kyrgyzia, again, the indigenous Kyrgyz are less Russified than they are in the north, and these people are looking into the Islamic world primarily, not towards Moscow, and this makes it fairly easy for the U.S. and the British to recruit people from this Salafi fundamentalist tendency. There's also an Uzbek ethnic group there. There's an Uzbek minority. So what we've seen in the last couple of weeks is the following pattern. The allegations are, from what you can reconstruct from the two sides, is that the Kyrgyz in South Kyrgyzia say that they were attacked by somebody, and they naturally then retaliated by driving out the Uzbeks, killing a couple of hundred of Uzbeks and driving the rest of them back into Uzbekistan. It's clear that the Bakiev clan operating from Belarus has something to do with this. The U.S. and the British are probably involved. Now, some people may object that the British have arrested Bakiev's son in London. That may be simply window dressing. That may be simply a ploy to obviously to divert attention away from where it might otherwise automatically go. But the question is, who started this? Was there a third force operating there in southern Kyrgyzia? And it seems to me that there might have been. Speculation is now that there were Uzbeks who were actually part of, in quotes, Al-Qaeda operating there, and maybe not just Uzbeks under the auspices of Al-Qaeda, but could also be Tajiks, because you look down there between Kyrgyzia and Afghanistan, there's Tajikistan, right? And these are Persians, and this is where you have some traction for the Tajiks, the Northern Alliance, right? The people that we've seen in Afghanistan. It looks to me like you might have had, in effect, Northern Alliance or people like that from the Tajik area might have been involved, or Uzbeks that have been recruited by Al-Qaeda. And, of course, when you say Al-Qaeda, this means U.S. and British intelligence. Al-Qaeda is what it has been since its foundation. It's the Anglo-American Arab Legion created by Robert Gates and the Carter administration in Afghanistan, created under the Reagan administration, too. So this seems to be the destabilization of Kyrgyzsia by the U.S. and the British through these indirect channels. Now, at the same time, though, we got to also recall the depression in the background is creating failed states. There is a tendency now for states, for nations, to collapse. Thailand, I think, is to some extent an example of this. There are, of course, conspiracies are always there, always manipulated, always orchestrated, whatever you want. But there's also objective economic reality that means that these things get going and go farther and have more traction than they otherwise would. Kyrgyzia is pretty close to the end of the world, at least as far as Eurasia is concerned. It's one of the poorest places. I guess Bangladesh is worse, but this is close to the end of the road. The general U.S. interest, as we see from Brzezinski and his book on the Great Game and the Grand Chessboard, is geopolitics, oil, the Great Game, domination, that you've got to maintain unrest, chaos in this part of the world. So in that sense, they've succeeded. Now, let's go to and by the way, the Russians, I think, are wrong to hesitate to send in peacekeepers. Russia's probably hesitant. If this is a U.S. operation, U.S.-British operation, President Medvedev of Russia wants to make this visit to Silicon Valley, California, before the end of the month as part of the G20 that's upcoming. And, I think it's a mistake to let that perspective condition the urgent need to get some Soviet Russian paratroopers in there just to end all of this massacre. And I think that would be widely applauded in the world community. And it would not be something like Georgia, where you had Georgia attack Russia and then Russia retaliates and the world the U.S. and the British and the European stooges blame Russia. So I think probably time to pacify this part of the world. Now let's switch back now to the longer historical perspective. This is the 18th of June, 2010, and 70 years ago today, General de Gaulle issued his first radio appeal from London. This was after the German Wehrmacht had defeated the French, the British Expeditionary Force, the Belgians, the Dutch, in a 6 weeks war, right, with Guderian launching that famous breakthrough from the Ardennes forest, breaking through all the way to the Channel at Abbeville, and then the encirclement of the British and many French at Dunkirk, the defeat of France, the fall of Paris, the surrender, and the coming of the Vichy regime under Marshal Pétain. And I think Pétain had come into power on the 15th of June or thereabouts. Pétain had signaled that he was going to essentially accept this status of a subordinate under the Nazi occupation. So de Gaulle was, of course, a tank general. He had served at Verdun, and he fled then to London and was able to convince Churchill that it was important for him to issue this appeal. So this is the founding of the Free French movement, and he says, the flame of French resistance will be maintained, and I invite all French military personnel to join me, rally to me, and we will continue to prosecute the war because there are resources out there in the world. The British Empire and, above all, the United States are going to be drawn into this, and this will be then the key to the freeing of France. Now, these facts should be well known. Let me just mention my own contact with the heritage of this man. I knew a French ambassador, Raymond Offroy, O-F-F-R-O-I, who had been de Gaulle's ambassador to Mexico, and indeed had planned a triumphant visit of de Gaulle to Mexico City, which was considered a great affront to the United States, that he was poaching in the U.S. backyard. This is La Mano en La Mano. So with the help of Ambassador Offroy, I soon acquired a significant appreciation for de Gaulle. The man is a giant. He is an exponent of nation building. His stress throughout is on French national pride. National pride, something without which it is difficult to live. And I say this now in the teeth of the school of national denigration, as de Gaulle once put it. The people with their yammering, carping criticism, they used to say the French government is always bad, it's corrupt, it's incapable, it's impotent. Well, that depended on the leadership, didn't it? And de Gaulle proved this in practice. He replaced the bankrupt and chaotic Fourth Republic with the strong and centralized Fifth Republic. Now, of course, nothing lasts forever, and this stuff has got to be renewed from generation to generation. Ironically, with Sarkozy today, we have the anti-de Gaulle. He's the stepson of his stepmother's husband is Frank Wisner from the CIA. So Sarkozy is the stepson of the anti-de Gaulle. In other words, the irony is that Sarkozy's family connections take him back to those same CIA circles who tried on 30 or 40 occasions to assassinate de Gaulle, because that's what that was all about, the CIA alliance with the OAS, the French secret army, the pro-Algerian colonialists, and so forth. But we could easily go on with many details about de Gaulle, but let's look at de Gaulle as an economist, and that we can use our last segment for that. De Gaulle as an economist and what we can learn from de Gaulle today. This is why there are nuclear reactors, the best fast rail in Europe, and tremendous aerospace, Airbus, all of this thanks to de Gaulle. What can we learn? Back in a minute.